Hi all, welcome and thanks for watching this video. Today we're going to talk about some ways to improve our English vocabulary and flow in writing with standard collocations. This is going to be especially useful in your academic writing if you find that you struggle with the best phrase or wording for something. When we say collocations, this is a technical way of saying words that are often co-located, or in other words, typical ways to phrase things in English using word choices that sound natural and clear. So in particular, we're going to answer the following questions. First, where can we find standard ways to say things in our English writing to make it easier on ourselves and also on our reader? And how can we maximize the English vocabulary we already have in order to sound more natural and have better flow in our writing? And to do that, we're going to explore two tools for phrasing: the Academic Phrasebank and the Corpus of Contemporary American English. So here's the problem we often face, not only as writers of a so-called second language, but also as writers in general. You're trying to express a particular idea in writing, and the words you used are technically correct, but something just sounds awkward. What are your strategies here? Well, we have some options I'm sure you're familiar with. For example, we could use a dictionary, and that's going to give us the meaning of a particular word. It might even give us one or two examples. We could use a thesaurus, kind of like a dictionary, but instead of definitions, we can look up similar words or synonyms to the word we're looking for, or even opposite words or antonyms to the word we're looking for. We could also use Google Translate or another translator like DeepL or something similar, and that's probably going to give us a one-to-one translation of our words that may or may not actually be very good in that second language. We could also ask like a smart friend or colleague, someone like that. Of course, they might be able to help us, but their information is coming from only their own limited experience. So that's where the following resources come in. The first resource we'll talk about is the Academic Phrasebank. The Phrasebank is a great resource for ready-made sentence examples. The second resource we're going to talk about is more suited to examining and analyzing your own written texts and vocabulary. To use the Academic Phrasebank, we just first need to understand some basic linguistic concepts, in particular, the idea of moves. By the way, I explained the idea of moves in terms of how they can help you structure and outline your text or edit and restructure your text in a different video. Basically, a move is a technical way of referring to what the writer is doing in a particular sentence or paragraph or section. Note that this is not the same as what the writer is saying, but rather a move refers to the actual goal or reason for saying something. For example, a typical move we usually have to make when doing our own research writing is stating our main research goal. There may be different ways to do this. For example, stating our main goal in contrast to previous work of other people, or stating our limited goal as part of a larger goal-oriented project, etc. But overall, this is a move that we almost always make, and we almost always make it in the introduction section, right? That's why in the Academic Phrasebank, you're going to find this move listed under the section Introductions. Let me open the Phrasebank and show you. So you'll see that the resource is organized pretty similar to a typical research paper. Namely, we have each typical section of a research paper, from introducing work all the way to writing conclusions. And on the left-hand side, you'll see these more general categories, which are moves that you might need in any section. For example, giving examples. If you click on any particular section, you'll find some really nice general guidelines about structuring and writing that section, along with these lists of typical moves. So I'll go back to introducing work for that. So here are some guidelines, and here are a list of moves typical in introductions. If I click on one of these, I'm going to get some really nice sentence templates that I could use to make that move in my own paper with a little modification. For example, I clicked on establishing the importance of the topic. Pretty well what we were just talking about, right? Here's a great example. One of the most important events of the 1970s was the beginning of our understanding of climate change. I don't know. Something like that. So imagine each of these sentences, but actually rewritten by you, and you can use these as an effective option for a first sentence of a paragraph, for example. Okay, let's talk about some examples, and then let's walk through how we could apply these to our own texts. Take a look at the two sentences here. Let's imagine we've just written these. What is the move we're trying to make with sentence number 1? The previous study of some other guy failed to solve the original problem. We're trying to criticize someone else's work here, right? Or in general, point out that something is missing in someone's previous work. So where do you imagine this type of move most often takes place? Probably going to happen either in the section that we call state of the art or literature or background or whatever we've titled the section where we talk about other people's studies, right? Either there or maybe in our own introduction, if we're using this sentence to help us highlight how our own work is going to come in and save the day. Do you agree? But maybe I don't like the sentence I've written here because, I don't know, maybe it feels too obvious or repetitive, or maybe I just want to find some good alternatives. So I can look in the phrase bank under the sections I'm most likely to be writing. Maybe introductions, maybe referring to other work. So if you're with me, take a minute now and just look through the appropriate section in the phrase bank. And in the chat, write the move you see that would best fit what I'm really looking for here with sentence 1. What move would that be? What category name is it? Let's see how you do. Okay, how about sentence number 2? This one's more general because it might happen in any chapter. Well, okay, we probably talk about our analyses only in certain chapters, so maybe this example only goes with chapters that go before those chapters. But the point is, we could make this type of transition statement in any chapter, right? In the next chapter, you will find details about the something something. So in the Academic Phrasebank, we'll find this type of move listed not under a particular section heading up top, but we're going to find moves like this listed under the general categories that are along the left side of the website. And you'll notice other useful ones here, like I mentioned. You can see, for example, explaining causality or describing trends. Those are all very useful. How about here? Do you see a particular sentence beginning that you like? So we just found possible revisions for 2 of our sentences. And now let's walk through one way we might typically use this resource before we've even written the sentence that we end up not liking. Complete this sentence for yourself. In an academic text, sometimes a writer has to what? Let's say sometimes a writer has to highlight the importance of her own research topic, right? That the topic is a field of great interest or controversy. This might be a move we typically make in our introductions as a way of pointing out the value of our own work, of course, right? What we're going to respond to in the research. Let's say we're writing and we're stuck at this point, how to make our topic sound important without going, too far. So we could go to a move category that seems to fit in the phrase bank and find good examples here and use that to start off our paragraph. I found a few under the category explaining the significance of the current study. Like, how about this work will generate fresh insight into blah, blah, blah. See, I wouldn't have come up with that phrasing on my own, fresh insight. I kind of like that. I could use that to begin the goal paragraph in my introduction. And already the writing is easier now because my introduction paragraph, or rather my paragraph, has started off really strong and it doesn't look so lonely there on the page. It's already half written, right? It's a little bit easier. Now I want you to take a minute and think of another typical move you might make in your introduction. Sometimes a writer has to what in their introduction? Then go to the phrase bank and find the right section and the right move category for what you're thinking about, and write the name of the move category in the chat. What sentence template would you be willing to use, obviously with some modifications from that category? Anything jump out at you? Okay, so Academic Phrasebank, that's one tool that's, I think, really useful for smoothing out your phrasing when you kind of know what move you want to make, but not exactly how to say it. And by the way, note also that you can't plagiarize from the Academic Phrasebank. These are just some standard sentence styles that you can use and modify as you like and feel confident that they sound very natural and quote unquote native speaker-ish. So don't worry. Okay, now let's talk about a tool that is much more complex, powerful, and really more tailored to exactly the words and phrases that you are interested in and that you would normally use. But with all of this power comes great responsibility and more specifically, a pretty high learning curve. So what we're going to talk about is called a corpus. What is a corpus? Let's talk first about that. A corpus is basically a big database of real language samples. Now, today we're going to talk about the corpus of contemporary American English, or the COCA corpus, which honestly is my favorite because, number one, it has over 1 billion words of example texts. And number two, it's both authentic and blended. Blended means it has samples from all different types of language, from academic texts to television and movies to spoken and news, etc. So it's kind of important to state, like, why do we call it authentic and who cares about that? This is really the advantage of a corpus over a dictionary. You can see how any particular word or phrase is really being used by real people, real writers in real contexts, a million billion different contexts to suit your needs. A dictionary could never possibly give you, at last count, 1,346,051 examples of the word because, which is enough to narrow it down to just the verb analyze, when in the past tense and within 2 words of because. There's 10 examples of that. So you can kind of see precisely where, when, and in what context each example was made in a very detailed way. It's basically like being able to search the entirety of language that was spoken or written by all human beings in America, in English at least, since like 1980. There is even a corona corpus, which I won't even get into in this video. So just briefly, what are some things you can do with a corpus once you learn a few tricks on how to use one? As a so-called native speaker, I myself use a corpus all the time while I'm writing or editing or working with someone else's text. I'm looking up what prepositions are most common with a certain verb, for example, like, is it consist of or consist in? Or the common connotations of a word, meaning not the dictionary definition, but the ways a word might be typically understood by someone. For example, whether a word has a negative connotation or whether a technical term is used in a certain context. And a lot of this falls under the category of collocations, words that like to be co-located. And those types of searches are really going to help us with our own phrasing. So we'll focus a little more on that. But I could also investigate, for example, grammar patterns that follow a certain word, or what types of texts a word is usually found in, whether they're formal or informal, etc. I can't even begin to list all the ways you can use a corpus, so let's just look at a few possible questions that we could answer with one. Okay, let's start off with our most basic type of search, the list search. This will literally just give us lists of sentences where the word we're searching appears. How about the word especially? Let's think about it for a second. This is a word I often talk about with German first language writers because probably the different ways we use this word in English versus German. So consider the example here. Especially the participants in the lower grades were affected. How does this sound for you? Does it fit the meaning of especially that you're used to? Does it fit the grammar of especially that you're used to? And if you're not sure, follow your instinct. Let's investigate. What predictions can we make about what we'll find? For example, will this word especially be common at the beginning of a sentence like it is above, or maybe in the middle of the sentence or somewhere else? Will it be common next to verbs, like especially practiced, something like that, or maybe next to other things like an especially funny story, etc.? Let's do a quick search and find out. In this case, I want to just look at academic sections because I happen to know that especially is a super common word, so I'm only going to be interested in academic examples. So I did that by going to sections and now just clicking my find. Okay, here from just academic sections, I can find over 32,000 examples of the word especially. And here, when I click on it, I can start looking at the examples. They're just listed here. I can click on these and find a bit more. But just taking a quick scan here, first thing I'm going to look for is, do they use it at the beginning of a sentence? I don't think I see any examples of that. Just on page 1 of 330, of course. But I'm not going to search through all of them. I'm just going to take a closer look and sort of see if I can observe some patterns here. Look especially toward women's popular religion. This is especially useful. Contribute to TFP growth, especially if it involves. When especially African countries faced, especially in the context of, especially in the case of, especially when blah, especially pivotal while blah, especially the data, aimed especially at, especially in the context of, especially among the, especially reflected in, especially for, especially when, especially those, especially if. Okay, one thing I notice already is there's a lot of especially plus like a dependent word, especially if, especially when, or a lot of especially plus sort of a prepositional phrase like this, especially in the context of blah, 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 especially in the case of. Especially deep. Especially presented, especially true. Okay, one other thing I could do here, if I want to see a bit of a different view, and now this is search 2.0, advanced, I could go to my quick search, keyword in context, and I'm going to get similar results, but they're going to be presented in a easier to read way. Because I have this nice color coding and my word of interest is in the middle here, now I can start like basically scrolling through and looking for some patterns. For example, a lot of especially for. Now I might notice that these colors correspond to parts of speech, and I'm kind of curious if this goes with any verbs. Looks like verbs are pink. So I'm going to look for verbs that come after especially. Just scrolling for pink. Okay, maybe that's not quite right there. Okay, we have verb phrases, is striking. Not that many verb, especially plus verb examples. I'm seeing a lot more especially plus prepositions and stuff, but Again, not at the beginning of my sentence, so I might need to change that sentence a little bit. Okay, let's look at one more example together. This time, a compare search. Word comparisons are really great when you're trying to decide between two synonyms or similar words or something like that, for example. So let's do a basic compare of these words, big versus large, in academic texts. First, how would you explain the difference between these two words? And what do you predict? What words or ideas do you think will be associated with big versus with large? And last, which word do you think is more common in collocation with a word like difference? Okay, let's take a look here. I had to reset my search a few times. Sometimes it's a little buggy, so just use the refresh if you need to. And we're going to do a compare, which is under this plus sign. I'm going to click on compare. And let's, again, just choose academic. I don't really want to get lots of unrelated examples, so let's see what we get here. So these are my compare results. One thing we see from the results is that large is more common with expressions of numbers, quantities, etc. And this is a common question I get. Like, should I say big number or large number, or big amount or large amount, etc. But on the other hand, big certainly seems to have more unique phrases, like even big bang here, or big mama, big mistake, big pharma. And these cannot really easily be replaced at all. I mean, we cannot say large bang. That doesn't make sense. By the way, one more note about the COCA corpus. It's free to use, but it will start asking you to register for at least a free account. And you definitely should, because it speeds things up a bit. In my experience, you'll never get any corpus-related spam from that. Although, honestly, I think I might enjoy that. Okay, so here are some example searches that you can try with the COCA. Choose a number 1 to 5 and try one out. If you're not sure how to perform the search, just follow the hint on the right. And pause this video so you can actually get some results to write in the chat along with the number. I would really like to see your analysis of the results you got for your query. What do you think? I hope these two resources are helpful for you as you improve your kind of flow and natural sounding phrasing in English, and expand your vocabulary and maybe even make life a little easier for yourself while writing. Anytime you're ready for the next step with your text, which is most likely going to be feedback, just add your name to the Padlet or shoot me an email. And thanks for watching.